I want to tell you about something that costs less than 30 cents a day, takes 30 seconds to prepare, and produces a measurable reduction in the inflammatory markers circulating in your blood within 10 days of consistent use. I am not going to build suspense around what it is. You deserve the answer before the explanation. The answer is lemon juice and a quarter teaspoon of turmeric in your first glass of water each morning, taken before coffee, before food, before anything else. That is the intervention. 2 ingredients, 1 glass of water, every morning. And before you decide you already know this and have dismissed it as wellness content, I want to ask you to stay with me for the next several minutes because what I am going to explain is not the vague claim that turmeric is anti-inflammatory and lemons are good for you. I am going to explain the precise biochemical mechanism by which these 2 compounds, in this specific combination and at this specific time of day, inhibit the inflammatory pathways that are driving the joint pain, the cardiovascular risk, the cognitive decline, and the metabolic dysfunction that affect the majority of people over 60. The combination matters. The timing matters. The mechanism is documented. And the reason most people who have tried turmeric have not experienced the benefit they expected is directly related to a bioavailability problem that most people are never told about and that this specific morning protocol is designed to address. I am Dr. David Miller. I have been practicing medicine for 15 years and I built this channel on one principle. There are nutritional interventions with genuine biochemical evidence behind them that most patients never hear about in a clinical context because the evidence exists in chemistry journals and pharmacology literature, not in the conversation that happens in a 12-minute appointment. This is one of them. Subscribe to Dr. Miller right now and hit that like button. We are building a community of people who understand the biochemistry of what they put in their bodies. Every subscriber makes this channel more visible to the next person who needs it. Let me tell you about a patient I will call Miriam. She was 66 years old. She had been living with what she described as background inflammation for years. It was not a specific diagnosis. It was a pervasive sense of her body being in a state of low-grade distress. Her joints ached in the morning, particularly her fingers and her knees, with stiffness that took 30 to 40 minutes to resolve. Her energy was consistently low. Her C-reactive protein, which is the standard blood marker of systemic inflammation, had been mildly elevated at 4.2 milligrams per liter for 2 consecutive annual blood tests. The normal upper limit is 3.0. Her physician had noted it both times. Neither time had any intervention beyond general lifestyle advice been recommended, because 4.2 was not elevated enough to trigger a specific diagnostic pathway. She was told to maintain a healthy lifestyle and return in a year. Miriam was doing everything she understood to be healthy. She was not overweight. She did not smoke. She exercised. She ate what she believed was a reasonable diet. She came to see me because she had read about turmeric and wanted to know whether it was worth trying. She had already purchased a supplement and had been taking it for 3 months with no discernible effect. When I asked her what form she was taking, she showed me the bottle. Standard turmeric capsules, 500 milligrams of curcumin extract. When I asked her whether she was taking it with food containing fat, she said she usually took it on an empty stomach in the morning. When I asked whether black pepper or piperine was included in the formulation, she said she did not know what that was, and the bottle contained no mention of it. She had been taking turmeric for 3 months and absorbing approximately 3% of the curcumin she was swallowing. The other 97% had passed through her digestive system and accomplished nothing. I want to explain exactly why, because the bioavailability problem with turmeric is the central reason most people's experience with it is disappointing. And solving it is the difference between a supplement that does nothing and a biochemical intervention that produces measurable results. Curcumin is the primary bioactive compound in turmeric. It is a polyphenol, a class of plant compounds with documented anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and neuroprotective properties. The research on curcumin is extensive. There are over 10,000 published studies examining its effects, more than for almost any other plant compound. The evidence for its ability to inhibit specific inflammatory pathways is robust and consistent. The clinical problem is that curcumin is extremely poorly absorbed from the gastrointestinal tract. It is hydrophobic, meaning it does not dissolve in water, and it is rapidly metabolized and eliminated. When you take a standard curcumin supplement with water on an empty stomach, the curcumin does not dissolve, does not cross the intestinal wall efficiently, and is largely excreted before it can produce any systemic effect. Studies measuring blood levels of curcumin after standard oral supplementation consistently find very low concentrations even after large doses, because the absorption barrier is so significant. There are 3 ways to overcome this barrier, and the morning protocol I am describing uses 2 of them simultaneously, while the third is available for people who want maximum effect. The first is fat co-administration. Curcumin is fat-soluble. When it is consumed alongside dietary fat, it dissolves in the fat, is incorporated into the lipid particles that carry fat-soluble compounds across the intestinal wall, and reaches the systemic circulation at dramatically higher concentrations than when taken without fat. Studies comparing curcumin absorption with and without fat consistently show absorption increases of 3 to 5 times when adequate fat is present. The lemon and turmeric morning drink is taken before food, which means it is not taken with a fat-containing meal. This is addressed in the protocol by adding a small amount of a fat-soluble carrier directly to the water. A 1/4 teaspoon of coconut oil or a few drops of a high-quality olive oil added to the glass provides the lipid matrix that allows the curcumin to dissolve and be carried across the intestinal wall. This addition is optional in the basic protocol and essential in the optimized protocol. The second is piperine, the bioactive compound in black pepper. Piperine inhibits the enzyme systems in the liver and intestinal wall that rapidly metabolize and eliminate curcumin from the body. Without piperine, curcumin is broken down and eliminated so quickly that even what is absorbed has a very short window to produce its effects. With piperine, this breakdown is substantially slowed. Studies show that the addition of piperine increases curcumin bioavailability by approximately 20-fold. 20 times more bioavailable curcumin from the same dose. A small pinch of freshly ground black pepper, which is all that is required to deliver adequate piperine, added to the morning drink transforms turmeric from a supplement that sits in your blood at negligible levels to one that reaches concentrations sufficient to produce the biochemical effects the research documents. This is not optional. The black pepper is the most important ingredient in the entire protocol from a pharmacokinetic standpoint, meaning from the standpoint of how the compound behaves in the body. The third enhancer is heat. Heating turmeric in a small amount of fat before adding it to liquid, the technique used in traditional Ayurvedic and South Asian cooking where turmeric has been used medicinally for centuries, further increases bioavailability by breaking down the plant cell walls that encapsulate the curcumin and making it more accessible for dissolution in the fat phase. For the morning drink protocol, dissolving the turmeric in a small amount of warm water first before adding the lemon juice and remaining water is a simple way to partially replicate this effect without requiring cooking. Subscribe to Dr. Miller and hit the like button. The bioavailability mechanisms I just described, fat co-administration, piperine inhibition of metabolic enzymes, and thermal processing, are pharmacology and biochemistry documented in peer-reviewed journals including the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry and the British Journal of Pharmacology. The failure of standard turmeric supplementation to produce clinical benefit in many people is a bioavailability failure, not an efficacy failure of the compound itself. This channel exists to give you the pharmacology that explains the difference. Hit subscribe. It means the next person who has tried turmeric and given up because it did not work finds out why and tries again correctly. Now, I want to explain the mechanism by which curcumin, when it is actually absorbed, reduces systemic inflammation. Because understanding this mechanism is what allows you to understand why this morning drink affects joint pain, cardiovascular risk, and cognitive function simultaneously rather than targeting any single condition. Chronic systemic inflammation in people over 60 is driven primarily by a molecular signaling pathway called NFKB, which stands for nuclear factor kappa B. NFKB is a protein complex that acts as a master switch for the inflammatory response. When activated, it enters the cell nucleus and switches on the genes that produce pro-inflammatory cytokines, including interleukin-1, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha. These cytokines circulate in the blood and drive inflammatory processes in every tissue they reach. In joints, they produce the swelling, stiffness, and pain of inflammatory arthritis. In blood vessel walls, they promote the formation and progression of atherosclerotic plaques. In the brain, they activate microglia, the brain's immune cells, producing neuroinflammation that impairs cognitive function and is implicated in neurodegenerative disease. In fat tissue, they contribute to insulin resistance. NFKB is not a disease-specific pathway. It is a global inflammatory switch that drives consequences across every organ system simultaneously. Curcumin is one of the most potent natural inhibitors of NFKB activation identified in pharmacological research. It inhibits the kinase enzyme that activates NFKB, preventing the inflammatory switch from being thrown. It also directly scavenges the reactive oxygen species that are one of the primary triggers of NFKB activation. And it inhibits the KOX2 enzyme, which is the same enzyme targeted by ibuprofen and naproxen, through a mechanism that is gentler and more selective than the pharmaceutical inhibitors, and without the gastrointestinal, renal, and cardiovascular side effects associated with chronic NSAID use. The lemon juice component of the morning drink contributes a separate and complementary mechanism. Fresh lemon juice is one of the richest dietary sources of a flavonoid called hesperidin and of vitamin C, which is the rate-limiting cofactor for collagen synthesis and for the regeneration of vitamin E, another critical antioxidant. But the most pharmacologically interesting compound in lemon juice for the purpose of this protocol is D-limonene, a terpene found primarily in the lemon peel that, when a whole lemon is squeezed, is present in small but meaningful amounts in the juice. D-limonene has documented anti-inflammatory properties through its own inhibition of NFKB signaling, and it also has a specific effect on liver detoxification enzyme activity that supports the clearance of the inflammatory byproducts that accumulate with chronic systemic inflammation. The combination of curcumin targeting NFKB from inside the cell and D-limonene and hesperidin providing complementary anti-inflammatory support creates a broader spectrum inhibition of the inflammatory cascade than either compound alone produces. Warm water as the base of the morning drink, rather than cold water, is not simply a palatability choice. Warm water consumed first thing in the morning stimulates peristalsis, the rhythmic contractions of the intestinal wall that move contents through the digestive system. This stimulation accelerates the movement of any overnight metabolic waste through the colon and supports the morning bowel regularity that is one of the most important factors in maintaining a healthy gut microbiome. A healthy gut microbiome reduces the production of the lipopolysaccharide, LPS, that crosses a compromised intestinal barrier and provides one of the primary systemic triggers of NFKB activation. The warm water component of the protocol is therefore addressing upstream gut health at the same time that the curcumin and lemon compounds are addressing downstream inflammatory signaling. Now, I want to give you the precise protocol because the details of preparation determine whether you get the pharmacology or just the placebo effect of doing something that feels healthy. The preparation is as follows. Heat 8 to 10 ounces of water to warm, but not boiling, approximately 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Add a quarter teaspoon of high-quality turmeric powder. The quality matters because curcumin content varies significantly between products. A turmeric powder standardized to at least 3% curcuminoids is the target. Stir the turmeric into the warm water first, allowing it to partially dissolve before adding anything else. Add a pinch of freshly ground black pepper, not pre-ground pepper from a container that has been sitting open, which loses piperine content over time, but freshly ground from a pepper mill immediately before use. Add the juice of half a fresh lemon Squeeze directly into the glass. If you are using the optimized protocol with fat for maximum absorption, add a quarter teaspoon of coconut oil or 3 to 4 drops of olive oil. Stir everything together and drink it immediately before the compounds begin to settle. The timing is the first thing of the morning, before coffee, before breakfast, before any other liquid. The reasons for this timing are multiple. The empty stomach allows the compounds to reach the intestinal wall without competing with food components for absorption. The warm water stimulates the peristaltic wave that moves overnight gut contents. And the cortisol awakening response that I have discussed in previous videos on this channel is supported rather than disrupted by warm water and anti-inflammatory compounds, rather than immediate caffeine on an empty stomach. This timing also ensures that the piperine-enhanced curcumin absorption occurs before the day's first food, after which the gastrointestinal environment becomes less predictable for compound absorption. The 10-day time frame I mentioned at the beginning of this video is not arbitrary. Studies measuring CRP, the standard inflammatory marker, before and after curcumin supplementation protocols with adequate bioavailability, show statistically significant reductions in CRP beginning at the 7 to 14-day mark of consistent use. This is the timeline for the cumulative inhibitory effect on NF-κB signaling to produce measurable changes in circulating inflammatory cytokine levels that CRP reflects. In people with elevated baseline CRP, the reductions can be substantial. A systematic review published in the journal Nutrition found mean CRP reductions of approximately 0.64 milligrams per liter in trials using bioavailable curcumin formulations. In people like Miriam, whose CRP was 4.2, a reduction of that magnitude begins to approach clinically significant territory. Miriam came back to see me 3 months after I corrected her protocol. She was now using the morning drink with black pepper and a small amount of coconut oil, prepared correctly and taken on an empty stomach first thing each morning. Her repeat CRP at 3 months was 2.7, down from 4.2, below the upper limit of normal for the first time in 2 years. Her morning joint stiffness, which she had been timing as taking 30 to 40 minutes to resolve, was now resolving in under 15 minutes. She told me her energy in the late morning was better than it had been in several years. She was still taking the same basic compound she had been taking for 3 months before we spoke, with no effect. The compound had not changed. The bioavailability had. How old are you? Write it in the comments right now. I want to see the age range of this audience because it determines what I focus on next. If most of you are in your 60s, I want to go deeper on combining this morning protocol with specific dietary changes that address the upstream triggers of NF-κB activation because the drink reduces the inflammatory signal but does not eliminate the sources feeding it. If many of you are in your 70s, I want to address the interaction between curcumin and the blood-thinning medications commonly taken at that age, because there is a meaningful pharmacological interaction that requires awareness, not avoidance, but awareness and appropriate monitoring. Your inflammation is not a fixed feature of your biology. It is a dynamic process driven by specific molecular triggers that are responsive to specific molecular interventions. The morning drink I described addresses the central inflammatory switch of NF-κB through 2 complementary compounds at a time of day when absorption is optimized and the downstream benefits of reduced inflammatory signaling begin to accumulate within days rather than months. 30 cents. 30 seconds. Every morning. The biochemistry is real. The 10-day window is documented. And the reason it works when standard turmeric supplementation did not is the black pepper sitting in your spice cabinet that nobody told you was the most important ingredient. I am Dr. David Miller, and I have spent 15 years watching patients spend significant amounts of money on supplements that were pharmacologically active compounds being made pharmacologically inactive by the way they were being taken. The gap between what curcumin can do in the research literature and what it does in most people's bodies is a bioavailability gap that a pinch of black pepper closes. Subscribe to Dr. Miller, hit the like button, share this with someone who has tried turmeric and given up. They did not try turmeric. They tried turmeric without piperine on an empty stomach with water. That is not turmeric. That is an expensive habit that deposits a yellow residue in a glass and nothing else. Now they know how to do it correctly. The supplement industry profits from selling you more when what you bought does not work. I profit from you understanding why it did not work and fixing it with what you already have. Subscribe if that difference matters to you. This content is educational in nature and does not constitute personalized medical advice. If you are taking blood-thinning medications, immunosuppressants, or medications for diabetes or gallbladder disease, please speak with your physician before beginning a daily curcumin protocol, as meaningful pharmacological interactions exist. The morning drink described here is a nutritional intervention and should be explored in partnership with a healthcare provider who knows your individual medical history.